Hi, welcome to HastingsVO, and today we're going to answer the question, what's in my signal chain? Let's find out. Okay, so here we are in my studio, and I get asked this question a lot. What plugins do you use? What are you using? How do you get your sound? And how I'm getting my sound, the plugins that I'm using don't matter. These compressors and EQs and limiters could be any compressors, EQs, and limiters. It's how I'm using them, why I'm using what I'm using that's important. And I hope this starts you down that path of thinking about your audio and listening to your audio this way. So before we break it all down and build it back up, I want to address a few things. Number one, looking at this stuff, if you're new to audio or you have no experience whatsoever, can be intimidating. And I appreciate that. But if you were to break down all of these plugins as to their use, you would find that there are two types of plugins. There are shapers and managers. Shapers shape the sound, and they are your filters and your EQs. And they shape the sound, making it brighter or making it richer and darker by boosting and cutting frequencies. Then you have managers. Managers manage the sound, duh. And those are going to be your gates, your compressors, and your limiters. They manage the sound. A gate manages the quiet parts, the silent parts, and your compressors and your limiters manage the loud parts. So if you were to look at my signal flow, I go shaper, manager, shaper, manager, shaper, manager. And the order that those go in is very important. That's called your signal flow. And signal flow is important because it's basically the route that your audio takes through your plugins. And if you put, say, an EQ in front of a compressor, it may sound differently than if you were to switch them around and put the compressor first and then the EQ, because of the nature of those plugins. So your signal flow becomes important, and my signal flow is important right off the bat. But before we move on, I would like to talk about one more thing, which is to like and subscribe to this channel if you want more content about being a professional voice actor. We talk about everything here from the audio to the audition to the booking. So with that, let's break this all down and build it back up so that you can hear and understand what I'm doing and why. Okay, and here we are with my microphone with nothing on it. And you're going to notice a couple things. You'll notice that it's quieter, but you'll also notice that it sounds out of balance. It sounds really out of balance. The truth is this microphone is pretty flat and doesn't sound horrible at all. But because you were listening to something in a particular way for so long, your ears got used to that. And any change to that, your ears are going to compensate for. And they might lie to you a little bit. This is why I always caution my students to take breaks when you're working on audio, because you can hear something for a while, make a change, think it sounds better because it's a change, then come back a day later and go, this sounds horrible. Why did I make that decision? Because your ears were lying to you. So this is yet another reason why I advocate for taking breaks, taking your time when you're working on your audio. So take breaks, go get a sandwich, pet the dog, go get a dog, whatever. And it's quieter because I know that I am going to be adding gain as we go. I know that my EQ, my compressors, my limiters, they all have the potential to add gain if I need it. I would rather start quieter and work through my signal chain than start too loud and have to manage my signal from the very beginning. The other reason that I keep it a little quieter is because the nature of a mic pre, what a mic pre does is not make a microphone louder. It makes a microphone more sensitive. Loudness is a byproduct. So if you think about that, the louder your mic, the more of the ambience, the room sound you're going to pick up. And so if you're in a small room or a less than ideal room, start quieter with your mic pre and build up your gain later. So I start a little bit quieter, knowing full well that I'm going to be adding some gain as we go. And the first thing in my signal chain after my mic pre is not a gate. It's a filter. And it's for two main reasons. Number one, I roll off the low frequencies, the subsonic frequencies. Those are low rumbles. Those are air conditioners downstairs, people walking upstairs, whatever. I roll those off and out of my sound. Number two, I roll off the supersonic frequencies. This helps tame any super high S frequencies that people complain about. The S is still there. I've just managed those supersonic frequencies. And if I need to add a little bit of clarity, I can do that a little bit later. But I can do so knowing that those supersonic frequencies are gone. The second thing that this filter does is it makes it so that my gate doesn't have to work too hard. And that's the goal for all of my plugins. I don't want any of them overworking. And what I mean by that is if the gate can't hear it, the gate doesn't react to it. So I've eliminated the low rumbling stuff that I'm not going to hear anyway because it's subsonic. And I've also eliminated the super high frequency stuff, so high hiss and that sort of thing. And it goes before the gate because if the gate can't hear it, the gate's not going to react to it. So we're going to turn the gate on and what you're going to notice is nothing because I'm talking. When I stop talking, that's when the gate starts to work. And what I want you to notice is my gate's not turning my microphone off, it's turning my microphone down. And that's very important because to achieve a natural sound, I don't need it to turn my microphone off. I need it to turn my microphone down, eliminate whatever extraneous ambient noise is left over, but still let my voice through. But the other thing that it does is it manages my breaths. Now, don't freak out. Everything's going to be okay. I get a lot of people go, I can hear my breaths. I can hear my breathing. Who cares? You know what? This brings me to a public service announcement. This is for the good of all. Listen carefully. Stop editing your breaths out of your audio. It sounds horrible. We can hear you chopping off the ends of your words or the beginnings of your words. Stop it. It sounds horrible. Number two, it's a colossal waste of time. Because number three, you're a human being. Breathe. Right? Use your gate properly, and it will turn the volume down on your breaths. That's its job. If you have a performance problem where you're not breathing in the right places, or you're over-breathing, or you find you're getting to the ends of sentences and you've run out of air and then you gulp your breaths, a gate's not there to fix that. That's performance problem. Don't grab a gate, grab a coach. What a gate is designed to do is manage the silent parts. So if you notice, I'll turn it off and I'll breathe, and then I'll turn it on and breathe, and it turns the volume down. The breath is still there. It's just quieter. It's just quieter. See? And that's its job. I don't need it to eliminate my breaths. I need it to turn them down. And then we move on to the compressor. So now we've got a good clean signal, and the compressor is going to do its job. And the job of my first compressor is to manage the volume when I get out of hand, to manage the loud parts. I don't need it compressing all the time. I don't want it compressing all the time. I only want it working when it needs to work, which is when I get loud. So my threshold is pretty high. It's about -6. That's pretty loud. My release is fairly quick because I want it to do its job, but when it doesn't need to do its job, I want it to release and let go. My ratio is relatively high at about 8-1, but that's okay because it's only going to be affecting the loud parts, the loud peaks. So when I turn this on, you're going to feel it get a little more dense because it's going to bring the volume up a little bit because this has an auto gain feature in it that when you start to bring the threshold down, it's going to compensate for that and bring the volume up. Because what does a compressor do? A compressor does one thing and one thing only. It makes things quieter. That's it. It doesn't make things louder, and anybody that tells you it makes things louder doesn't know what they're talking about. Because the compressor doesn't make things louder. The auto gain makes it louder. So I don't normally like auto gain. I want to have as much control as possible, but I'm not really doing a lot. Here, I'm not working it really, really hard, so I don't have to fear. And I also have thought about it ahead of time with my mic pre. So I'll bring that in, and you're going to notice it gets louder, but it also gets more dense. It sounds better. It sounds more even. I'm still hearing the low-mid frequency, that boxy sound, but we've brought up the volume a little bit, and it doesn't sound as weird as it did when we first turned it on, right? So you've gotten used to this sound. Interesting, right? So, but you'll notice the compressor, if I'm simply talking, it's doing very, very little, if at all. And that's exactly how I want it. Now we're going to move on to the EQ. Now this first EQ, where the voice lives, is in the mid-range. So from 300 hertz up to about 6,000 hertz is the primary place where the voice lives. What I'm noticing is I'm hearing that cardboard box sound, right? That sort of sounds like this, right? That's those low mids that sound like I'm in a cardboard box. And I could attack those. I could cut those. But I prefer instead to find balance by bringing up the frequencies around those frequencies to get it into balance. So if I have too much of something, rather than cut it immediately, I may try that, but I'm saying what I usually gravitate towards is, instead of cutting that frequency, is building the frequencies around it. So what you'll notice is I'm adding a tiny bit at 6K, that top end, the high end of the voice, of the mid-range. I'm adding a little bit at 2.5K. So the mid-range, still in the high mid-range area, but the mid-range. And then I'm going down below and adding a little bit at 100 hertz to bring in a little bit of that low end. So what you're going to notice now is what I call cleaning the window. I'm going to turn this on, and I want you to first listen to my S's and my T's. So listen to my S's and my T's right now, right, as they sound. And they sound okay. They sound fine. But they could use a little bit of clarity. So S's and T's, and I'm going to turn this on, S's and T's, right? They get a little bit clearer, and we're sort of going to cut through a mix a little bit better. And we've balanced our sound on that top end. Now I'm going to turn it off, and I want you to listen to the low frequencies. I want you to hear that chest voice, right? When I do this, now I'm going to turn it on, and I want you to hear that low end come in, right? Not much, but just enough to sort of bring it back into balance with everything. And we could stop here. This is a great sound, right? We have a really nice sound. I want to manage just a little bit more. I want to have a little bit more control over my audio. So I'm going to bring this compressor in. Now, this compressor is going to be doing essentially what the first compressor does, which is not work on any of the talking parts, but it's going to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the louder parts. So it's going to do its job, which is it's not going to necessarily affect the talking parts. It's only going to really be affecting the loud parts. This compressor has a certain sound to it, but I like what this distressor does, so that's why I use it. And this is what it sounds like. What you're going to notice is sort of that a little bit of the detail that we put in is gone, but not in a bad way. And it's also brought back a little bit of that low mid-range. But again, not in a bad way, I don't think. And we've added a little bit of volume, but as you can see, it's not working. Unless I get loud, then it's going to start doing its job. Ha, right? Ha. Then it's going to start doing its job. And so, again, this is just doing what the first compressor does, but I've stepped my compression down. Next up, we have the final EQ. Now, this EQ is important because I want you to notice I'm not going back to this EQ to fix the way that this compressor has imparted its personality onto my audio. All I need to do is keep moving forward, put another EQ in, and make small changes. Because I know this sounds fine. I know that without this compressor, this sounds great. But it's not managed enough. So I turn this compressor on, it begins to do its management thing, and I say to myself, that's interesting. Now I've lost a little bit of clarity, and I feel like I might have lost a little bit of low end. So I want to add those back in. Well, I don't need to do it over here. I can do it here. And I can do it here after the compressor without worrying about whether it's affecting the way that this compressor is set. I've got the compressor set where I want it to be. So I don't want to affect it by adding more volume here or taking volume away here with this EQ. So I move forward. And what happens is that detail comes back, the low end gets brought back in, and we're back in balance. And I think that this sounds quite pleasant and great. Now, this is the sound of my studio. And that's why I don't normally put my limiter in my signal chain like this. It's in my DAW. In every template that I have for auditions or for clients, I have a limiter at the end. Whether it's engaged or not, it's there. And it's there all the time because I treat my limiter like the volume knob for my studio. This is everything before it is the sound of my studio. It's how my studio sounds. And rather than, again, mess with any of this stuff and turn things up or turn things down, if I were to turn up my mic pre, that's going to affect how this compressor works, how this gate works. It's going to affect how this compressor works, and I don't want to have to go back and forth and adjust everything. So I've got the sound of my studio, and I've got it at a decent volume that will work for every client that I'm going to work for. And now if I'm doing auditions and I need them to be competitively loud, because that's why people normalize, which is ridiculous, I don't want to normalize. I don't want to give up control to an algorithm and hope that it works right. What I want to do is put a limiter at the end of my audio so that I know what it sounds like when I bounce it down to an MP3 or to a WAV file. And so that's why I bring this in. I've just added volume to my sound. I can turn this down, and now it should be about a 1-to-1 ratio, right? If I turn it on or turn it off, it's not going to be doing anything. But what my limiter does is it sets my output. So I'll never go over minus 1.44 with this particular output. I could set it to whatever I want. I could set it to -3. I could set it to minus 1.5, whatever. But it's at minus 1.44. But it'll keep me from going over, no matter how loud I get. So I could scream into this thing and I'm never going to get over minus 1.44. This is the big time manager, right? But if I'm doing something quiet, if I have an audition and it's quiet and I want it to compete and I'm just talking like this, well, I'm not going to come in here and bounce back and forth between here and my DAW when I can just turn up the volume here and know full well that no matter what I do, no matter how loud I get, this is going to keep me from going over. But I can still have good volume, competitive volume for my work. Now, for clients, I don't usually use this because I don't need to, because this is the sound of my studio. And they're going to limit. They're going to do everything. I want to give them as clean a signal as possible. And if it's over compressed, they're not going to be able to take that compression out. You can't remove compression. If it's over EQ'd, well, they're going to have to do some heavy lifting. I'd rather them get a nice representation, a balanced sound that represents all the frequencies and isn't over compressed and isn't too loud. Give them all the headroom they need. I'd rather them turn me up than turn me down to fit into their mix. They're going to run it through their processing. They're going to do what they need to do with it. I want them to have as natural a sound as possible. But for auditions, I'm going to be using this as a volume knob to compete with other people. And so, and this gives me far more control than a normalizer. So I hope that helps. I hope that you can go about your day now thinking about and listening to your audio differently. Compare this to what you have been doing and see if maybe you were on track, right? Maybe you have been thinking about things this way, but I've added some clarity to it. But always, ask yourself what you're trying to do with that plugin first before you engage it, right? Don't try and fix a management problem with a shaper plugin, right? And then make your changes. Turn the plugin on, turn the plugin off, and ask yourself, better or worse? Did it solve the problem or did it not? And if it didn't, make your changes and then keep doing that. Take breaks. Don't forget to take breaks because your ears will lie to you. And I hope that helps. Thank you so much. Please, if you have any questions or comments, maybe you do things differently, leave them below. I would love to talk about it. Go to my website, HastingsVO.com, if you want to send me an email directly or sign up for coaching, shameless plug. And I look forward to talking to you again in the next video as we go more in depth into some of these plugins and we answer your questions and everything. So again, like, subscribe if you want more videos about being a professional voice actor. Look at the socials and all that fun stuff, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Now get back to auditioning.